And so the question is, who are these controlling group of beings? Well, I have an article on my blog called Who Are the Reptilians? And I've been rewriting that article, actually, and it's gotten like 5 times longer. Because, and so at a certain point, if people decide to visit my blog at ascendingspirit.us, they can check back to see if the reptilian article has been rewritten yet. So I've been meditating on this for years, trying to figure out exactly what's going on with the reptilians, if they really exist. Who are they? Where do they come from? All this kind of stuff. And what I have worked out through meditation and trying to corroborate through evidence of the researchers and authors that are out there, and trying to discern fact from fiction, true narratives from false narratives, because there's so many false trails that are laid out there on purpose in the conspiracy theory community and in the UFO community and all that stuff. There's so many false trails, so many misunderstandings. So what I see is that the reptilian aliens are real, and Nibiru is real, and it does have a 3,600-year orbit around our sun. And the last time they visited was a few hundred years before 0 AD. And that's why the calendar was reset. It was actually to signify the birth of, quote, their new world, which was the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire, let me look it up real quick, was established right before 0 AD, something like 70 BC or something. So let me see when it was established here. 27 BC is when the official Roman Empire was founded. The calendar was reset. 27 BC. So right before 0 AD, basically. The calendar was reset in 46 BC by Julius Caesar. And it was called the Julian calendar at that time, but later it was very slightly modified and then changed to the Gregorian calendar. But the Julius and Gregorian calendars are almost exactly the same. And so why would Julius Caesar change to the Julian calendar in 46 BC and start counting down to 0 AD and then start counting up again if 0 AD signified the birth of Christ? It doesn't make any sense. And so Julius Caesar, must have been psychic about when Jesus Christ was going to be born if 0 AD really signified the birth of Christ. So, this is the ridiculousness of the myth that has been invented by the Roman Catholic Church. And they invented this myth about the birth of Christ.
It just barely occurred to me. Wow, I must be daft, but it just barely occurred to me that the Roman Catholic Church, it's called the Roman Catholic Church.
Yes,
Roman,
exactly.
Actually. Like it was an establishment of the state.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah,
wow. I can't believe that just barely hit me.
Well, this is the. It didn't hit me until maybe like 10 years ago, and I was already 36 at that time. It would seem like we would realize this from the time we were like, 16 or something.
Yeah, Roman Catholic Church. What, you mean the Romans invented it?
Right, exactly. But this is how they herd and control human beings, through this mass brainwashing and this mass kind of social conformity and religious conformity. And I don't want to say anything against Christianity because, first of all, I've seen Jesus Christ in meditation. So I feel that he is a real being, and his energy and grace are very, very prevalent in the world, and it's really doing a lot of good. My only comment on Christianity at this point would be that the early Christian church and what was taught is very different from modern Christianity. The early Christian church had a lot of meditation, a lot of energy work, a lot of yoga type techniques. And this is very different from modern Christianity, where none of that is taught.
I think even the story of creation was very different. Modern Christianity is about a sentient God who created us, and I believe the original Christianity say that the universe was created by a demiurge, which is kind of an interesting idea, but it's not like a personality the way we think of God in the modern Christian ideas. But that's just to add to what you were saying about how it's so different, the original from the present.
Yeah, the manipulation goes back thousands and thousands of years. And I think probably the last time we were totally free and independent of the negative elite was probably prior to 5,000 or 6,000 BC.
Wow.
But the Nibiruans, these reptilian alien beings that are extremely, extremely advanced, they come and visit Earth for a few months, I think, and that's about it, every 3,600 years. So they're almost never here. They perceive time very differently from us. And so in meditation and through researching a little bit about astronomy and so on, and trying to correlate what I see in meditation, I've kind of worked it out that 1 second from the reptilian, the Nibiruan point of view, 1 second for them is 280 seconds for us. So that means that 1 year for them is 280 years for us. So 280 Earth years is just 1 year to them. So wow. That's a huge disparity in perception of time.
So from the time that let's say from the time Jesus walked the earth to now, for us that's 2,000 give or take years.
Right.
For them, what would that be like? Just
2,000 divided by 280, whatever that is. So it'd be like 9 years or something, 8 years.
Wow. Okay. So it's just like yesterday, pretty much.
So one human lifetime, 75 years, let's say, is like 3 months to them. So we're like kind of like mosquitoes or flies or something to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we live and die very rapidly from their perspective. And because of the huge disparity in perception of time, they're not able to directly interact with us. So what are they doing here? If they're not physically here, then why are they interested in this planet? I get multiple answers. They were initially interested in mining gold. That was a long time ago. And then they were interested in saving themselves because they're dying out. Their DNA is degrading. And the reason why their DNA is degrading is because they've lost their home planet. And if a species is conceiving its young off planet, then there's a lot of mutation that takes place in the RNA during conception. And the species degrades and becomes sterile and dies out. And so that's what's happening with the Nibiruans. They're dying out very, very slowly. Now, their technology is so advanced, it's millions and millions of years ahead of us. But on the other hand, science and technology have its limits, and we are going to hit our limit with science and technology, I believe, in the next couple thousand years. But they've been trying to save themselves, and because of their advanced technology, they've been able to extend their lifespans greatly. So their original lifespans were around 20,000 years or so, but they've been able to extend their original lifespans by like 12 times or 10 times. So their current lifespans are like 200,000 years. They're very, very long-lived.
So 200,000 Earth years, right?
Yep, that's right. So from their perspective,
280. I'm just trying to boil it down.
Yeah, I'd have to do the math, but it's something like that.
Wow.
And actually, let me do the math right now. So I believe their original lifespan in the planet that they were from was around 20,000 years. So 20,000. 17 to 20,000 years is what I got. So I think, let's see. Okay, so 20,000 divided by 280 is 71 years. Okay. And then 200,000 years divided by 280, 714 years. Okay, well that makes sense. Okay, so basically what I see is that they spend most of their time in hypersleep chambers. And there's not that many of them left. There's like a few thousand, and that's it. And
so they're not procreating anymore, or what?
Well, they are master geneticists. And so in their society, they have created slave races. And so they have 2 or 3 different Nibiruan genetic strains that they have created, that they create these slave races from. And the slave races are not nearly as intelligent as they are. They have like a worker class that's just smart enough to understand how to do the basic labor tasks that they need done. They have a kind of a managerial class of much smarter beings. And it looks like to me they have some kind of the secret priesthood, occult class of beings. And the secret priesthood class of beings are not nearly as long-lived as the original Nibiruans. And they are actually the ones who interact with and train the Annunaki on Earth. And the Annunaki are, the way that I'm using the word, the Annunaki are basically reptilian hybrid beings that have been created from a previous reptilian humanoid race that was native to Earth, that is native to Earth. And they have been doing genetic experiments with this race of beings for a long time. But they're sterile, they can't reproduce, and their lifespan is 3,600 years. And they are very intelligent, although not nearly as intelligent as the original Nibiruans. And so the secret priesthood class and the managerial class and the worker class are much shorter lived than the original Nibiruans. And when I say original Nibiruans, what I'm talking about are the highest class of Nibiruans that have not been genetically modified. They still have the same DNA as when they were on their home planet. So anyway, the Annunaki are actually the ones who are ruling over the human elite. And they're the ones who appear to the human elite as demon lords and They use advanced technology, and they seem real to the human elites. And so this is the basis of their satanic pedophile cult. And they've been given a false belief system to follow, a religion, a satanic religion, which they adhere to because they're alone in the world and they've been brainwashed since they were kids into this cult, basically. And they've done terrible things, and they've seen terrible things done since they were children, and this is why they're so warped. They've created monsters, basically. And so the original Nibiruans, which are the highest class in their society, there's only a few thousand of them left, and they can still procreate, but the progeny is degraded because the conception most of the time is not viable anymore because there's too many errors, too many genetic errors that are created, I think, by what's called the messenger RNA. I'm not a geneticist, but in my elementary understanding of this, the messenger RNA that is creating the genetic code during conception mutates wildly and has all kinds of genetic errors in that code when the conception is taking place off planet. And there's a couple of different reasons for this. One is that there's a lot of radiation in space. But the main reason is that the magnetosphere of a being's home planet is encoded with all of the genetic codes that are allowed to exist on that planet. And all the genetic codes in the plant and animal kingdom, and even the crystalline patterns that appear in the planet's crust are in the magnetosphere. And so the magnetosphere of a being's home planet is what prevents wild genetic mutation during conception. And so a species' survival is tied to its home planet's survival. There's no way that humanity can depart Earth and become a spacefaring race. We can travel in space for long periods of time, and if a person were to be conceived on the Earth and live on the Earth until their teen years, at least, and then if they were to leave the Earth in a spaceship and live in space their entire lives or on other planets, etc., they would be okay, I think, mostly. Their immune system would weaken and their lifespan would be somewhat shorter. If they would have lived, let's say, until the age of 84 on Earth, then their lifespan probably would be shortened by about 20 years out in space. That's what I get intuitively. So we could become a space traveling race, but not a space-faring race, meaning that we can't propagate beyond Earth. There's no way. And this is one of the reasons why we don't have little green men running around everywhere, why an advanced alien race has not already shown up to enslave us, is because they can't procreate here. And so we do have two alien races that are here, to my knowledge. One is the Greys. They are amphibious in nature, and they wear very advanced spacesuits that are like a semi-metallic skin over their real bodies, and so that's why they look very smooth and kind of featureless to the people that see them. And they have also lost their home planet, and they're dying out, and they and the Reptilians have been cooperating, but the Greys only live about maybe 400 years, and so they're like, flies or mosquitoes to the Reptilians too, to the Nibiruans. And then the other alien race on the planet are the Annunaki, the Nibiruan hybrids that they've created from a prior reptilian humanoid race that existed, around the time of the dinosaurs or somewhere in there. I haven't worked out the time scale on that one exactly. And the Anunnaki have also been called, I believe, the Lacerta species, the Lacerta Reptilians. I've watched some interesting videos on YouTube that talked about the Lacerta reptilian species, and some of them are worth a listen. They have some interesting information that may contain some nuggets of truth here and there. And so I guess that I really shouldn't say that the Anunnaki are an alien species exactly, but my understanding is that the Nibiruans have modified their DNA so much in the past that the original gene code is gone. And whether or not the Nibiruans could ever bring back the Anunnaki or the Lacerta reptilian species in their original form, I have no idea. My intuition says no, but I'm not sure of the reason. I haven't looked into that detail in meditation. But alien DNA cannot remain healthy on Earth, basically, through subsequent generations. And the Nibiruans already tried to fix their problem with the Anunnaki previously. They tried for hundreds of thousands of years with no success. And so the Anunnaki race finally died out from over manipulation of their genetics, basically. Because once the genome of a being is changed past a certain point, then it can't recover and it dies out. Biotechnology companies on the Earth actually discovered this back in the 40s, I believe, when they were playing around with GMO bacteria. And they discovered two things. One is what I just said, that if they modify the genome, I think it's more than about 30% or so, then successive generations of bacteria from that modified genome degrade, and that GMO species dies out within a certain number of generations. And I don't know how many generations exactly. It's probably dozens, dozens of generations. The other thing they discovered is that if the genome is modified less than that threshold percentage, whether it's 30% or another percent, but less than that threshold percentage, then the genetically modified organism, their DNA will gradually, over a number of generations, revert back to the original genetic code that they had. And it is the magnetosphere of the Earth that is pushing the genetic code back into the original form. And so this is the real reason why companies like Monsanto don't want farmers saving GMO seed. Because if they save seed for generations and generations of this GMO seed, whether it be corn or a canola or another crop, after a certain number of generations, the GMO traits of that crop will start to fade out. So not only are they losing money by not being able to sell their seed, but their product can't remain viable year after year. They have to recreate the GMO seeds every year in their lab, which they do en masse. Millions and millions and millions of seeds per year. And this is also why biotechnology companies have been so incredibly careless about cross-pollination and contamination of the biosphere by GMO crops. Because they know that whatever cross-contamination and cross-pollination occurs is not going to have any lasting effect. And so the magnetosphere and the way that it contains all of the genetic codes for Earth, this is what is known as the web of life, basically. It's part of the divine design, and it forbids any pollution of the genetic code for a particular planet. Because if life forms on a particular planet can be interfered with to no end, then what's the point in evolution? If there's so much interference that humanity and other plants and animals on a particular planet can't evolve naturally, then there's no point in this creation in the first place. And so the divine design has been created with these safeguards in place. And that's why we don't have little green men running around everywhere. And the Greys are here trying to save themselves by doing genetic experimentation, the same way that the Reptilians are, the Nibiruans. But they're not going to succeed. It's impossible. And the reason they're not going to succeed is because of the way that the universe was created. And that's a whole nother arc that I don't want to get into right now because we don't have the time. But basically, in order to propagate a species away from its home world, you would need to recreate the magnetosphere of your home planet. And that is impossible. And the short answer on why it's impossible is because recreating that field of energy involves the energies of higher dimensions. We cannot create a device which can broadcast an energy of a higher dimensional nature here. It is impossible. And that is also part of the divine design. You can't mess with the divine design. There's no way around it. The Nibiruans have been trying for millions of years to save themselves, and they have completely failed. And at this point, they're having this giant fantasy about creating an immortal hybrid superhuman being that they can then transfer their consciousness into. And so it's some kind of a weird, I don't want to say cyborg, but it's some kind of a weird mind transfer technology that they're working on, like you've seen in sci-fi movies. And that is total nonsense. It will never work. I almost feel sorry for the Nibiruans because they're living in a total fantasy. And this mind transfer technology is actually the basis of how the human elite are controlled and why they are obsessed with bloodlines. Because the mind transfer technology is based somehow on the genetic code. And I don't know enough about genetics, and I don't know enough about science in general to give a technical explanation of this. But I don't want to say mind control of the human elites because you really cannot control a human being like a puppet. But the heavy influencing and conditioning that we see going on with the human elites in this fake Luciferian blood sacrifice pedophile religion that they follow. This is a result of the human elites being convinced by their fake religion to surrender themselves to their demon lords that are appearing, before them on ritual days and so on. And in order for the heavy influencing to work, a human being has to carry this recessive genetic code which allows for that. And it probably is a genetic error, actually, rather than an actual trait. That's my intuition. So anyway, back to the Nibiruans and their plight to save themselves. The only way forward for them that I see is that their original planet is not completely destroyed. It basically was hit by a giant comet and turned into a ball of lava floating in space. So it's a ball of molten rock at this point. But if they went back to their home planet, which I see orbiting around Alpha Ophiucius, the brightest star in the Ophiucius constellation, it's a bright blue-white star with an orange companion star about the size of our sun. And it's the orange companion star that is displacing comets and causing gravitational anomalies, and that's what's causing, kind of high comet traffic in their solar system. But if they were to go back to their home planet and dock their spaceship within the magnetosphere of their home planet, then they would discover that they could procreate, and their genetic errors would start to reduce, and their conceptions would become viable again. Now, the Greys, their home planet was completely destroyed, I believe. I don't know where they're from. I haven't looked into it yet. I heard that they're from the Zeta system, and I don't know anything about that right now. But as I understand it, the Greys have lost their home planet completely, and so I don't know if there's any way forward for them or not. Their home star still exists, and I don't know if the star's magnetosphere contains their genetic codes or not. I haven't looked into that in meditation at all. But that would be the only advice that I could give them, is to see if their home star still contains their genetic codes in the magnetosphere, to see if they were to orbit their home star closely within the magnetosphere of the star, would they be able to have viable conceptions? I really don't know. So anyway, back to the Nibiruans and their home planet. So the Nibiruan home star, Alpha Ophiucius, at some point captured its current companion star, which started a very heavy comet season in their solar system. And eventually their home planet, which I see as a very large rocky planet at that time anyway, fairly far from Alpha Ophiuchus, so it was orbiting probably somewhere around where Jupiter is right now. So it was that distance from their home star. So it was a very cold planet, and I don't see that the Nibiruans are carbon-based. I see that they're lithium-based, actually, which is strange to think about, but this is one of the reasons why they perceive time so differently from us, is they're not even a carbon-based life form, and the perception of time in a species is related to the mitochondria in the DNA, and how fast the mitochondria manufacture the substance that they manufacture that gives energy to the body, essentially. And so the mitochondria is kind of like the governor of the speed of time in a physical body. And so anyway, I don't want to go off on a big tangent about that now, but there's just so much information to cover. It's just ridiculous. Anyway, this mechanism in the Nibiruans' lithium-based bodies is significantly different than what we have, and affects their perception of time to be much, much slower than ours. Or actually, modern science today would probably say that the Nibiruans perceive time much faster than we do. That's probably the way they would put it. But anyway, their planet got hit by a giant comet, turned into a ball of lava, and they saw the comet coming, and about I think about 40 or 30% of their population was able to escape. And then they decided to leave and seek a replacement planet, because they didn't have any knowledge about the DNA degradation that would happen out in outer space, and how the magnetosphere holds the DNA in form and allows a conception to be viable, and so on and so forth. Even though they're extremely intelligent, they have an IQ of like 2,000. That's the number that I get in meditation. I have no idea if that's right or not, but they're able to hold 5 or 6 abstract thought forms in their minds at once. And when I say abstract thought forms, I'm talking about, complex mathematical equations and scientific, concepts and So they could literally do a very complex, multifaceted mathematics or physics problem in their head. This is how intelligent they are. They have 2 extra chakras in their head that have to do with mental prowess that humanity has not developed yet, that we will develop someday if we evolve far enough, if we don't destroy ourselves. But they have super savant-like, super genius abilities. But unfortunately, for reasons that I'll explain in another talk, they have become almost completely non-emotional beings. And since spiritual awareness and the heart are directly related, any species that has lost their heart connection, basically, is not able to advance spiritually, and ultimately they lose their home planet and die out. And so when their star, Alpha Ophiucius, when their sun captured the orange companion star that it now has, then that started a heavy comet season in their solar system, and that's what eventually led to their planet's environment being destroyed and no longer able to sustain life because it's a giant ball of lava in space at this point. And one can only be led to the knowledge about the magnetosphere and its role in the genetic codes through meditation and through spiritual awareness, because that is higher dimensional knowledge. And since they are kind of like a bunch of Mr. Spocks without the human side, and they're very cold and emotionless, yet extremely intelligent, they have lost the path, basically, to spiritual enlightenment. It's no longer possible for them, I don't think. I could be wrong on that. I do see a spiritual awakening among the younger Nibiruans, but I'm not sure how far it's going to go. And so they decided to seek a replacement planet and figured that they could just start over and build a new world. And so they found Nibiru, which at that time I believe orbited either Sirius A or Sirius B. I've heard that it was orbiting Sirius B. And so then they were there for quite some time, but eventually decided to, using their extremely advanced technology, which is just absolutely astounding, they decided to push their adopted planet Nibiru towards our sun because they wanted to interact with the Earth. And Nibiru orbits between our sun and, I believe, Sirius B. And so I believe Nibiru gets pretty close to Sirius B, and then it comes back towards the Earth. And the whole orbit is 3,600 years.
Okay.
And so if they were here right before 0 AD, then that means they were also here around 3,600 or 4,000 BC. And that's exactly when the ancient Sumerian Empire appeared out of nowhere.
Oh, wow.
And the ancient Sumerians had the first known money system, currency. They had the first known advanced number system that could count, into the hundreds. They had the first mathematics. And if you look at the writing system that the Sumerians used, I can't remember the name of it, but I think it's called cuneiform, if I'm not mistaken. But if you look at
I think you're right on that.
Yeah, if you look at the cuneiform writing system, it literally looks like a system of writing that is describing to a person how to move their lips to say the sounds, which is like a system of writing that you would use to teach a small child how to read and then, speak, how to verbalize what they're reading. That's what it looks like to me.
Hmm.
So this to me says something came to Earth and taught the human beings that had lost all of the knowledge from the age of light during the fall. Some group came to Earth and taught us about money and mathematics and basic building techniques and basic writing. Because before this period, we were tribal. Everything was tribal. Everything was about being in balance with the earth and living in community. But suddenly, the Sumerian Empire, we have money, and we also have war, because Sumerians had different states, and they were at constant war with each other. So suddenly, you have war. You have modern warfare existing in ancient Sumeria, where everybody's at war all the time, and it's this big, contest to see who can be on the top. So to me, that speaks of reptilian influence, or at least whoever these beings are. It speaks of some kind of external influence happening on the human world that created ancient Sumeria. And so this is why the story of the Nibiruans really is the story of the fallen angels. And that is the tie-in for the fallen angel mythology that we have on Earth. The Nibiruans are the fallen angels, because they are, in our part of the galaxy at least, I don't know how big of a portion of the galaxy, but they are in our galactic neighborhood the most advanced species. They are the most advanced physically. They're the most powerful. They're the strongest. They have the most advanced immune systems. I don't think any virus or bacteria can kill them. They are the longest lived, even before they extended their lifespans through life extension technologies and hypersleep chambers, which are not a good idea, by the way. It messes with your consciousness and your spiritual growth. But even before life extension technologies were implemented in their society, they were the longest lived species in our galactic neighborhood. They are the most intelligent, IQ-wise. They have the most developed mental capacities. They're the most advanced technologically. Their main weapon actually appears in our mythology as Zeus's lightning bolt. Their main weapon, which you can see the scars of actually on Mars, is an electrical arcing type weapon. The largest canyon on Mars, which spans 1/3 of the planet and is hundreds of times larger than the Grand Canyon, that was created by their electrical weapon. And so they have tremendous technology and extreme destructive power and offensive and defensive capabilities. And that's why nobody in our galactic neighborhood has been able to stop them, basically. And I haven't really looked into Mars and what caused the atmosphere of Mars to be destroyed and what the battle there was about. But I did watch a video which pretty much proves beyond a reasonable doubt that the surface of Mars as it exists currently was created from severe electrical scarring from huge arcs of electricity. And the theory presented in the video was that it was a video, I believe, called The Electric Universe or something like that on YouTube. And the theory in the video about Mars and its electrical scarring was that it had interacted electrically with some other celestial object. And they didn't talk about the reptilians at all. That wasn't their bag, They weren't that deep into conspiracy theory. But I believe that the electrical scarring on Mars was caused by a battle between the Nibiruans and some other party. And so anyway, at this point, there doesn't seem to be a likely path back to grace and the viability of their species for the Nibiruans. And although, if they return to their home planet and dock the ship like I was talking about, I suppose it's possible. But I don't see them making that choice. But part of the reason why they are interacting with humanity, or rather why the higher dimensions are allowing them to interact in such a way with humanity, is that the reptilians are essentially exposing us to all of the negative qualities and traits that show up in this dimension, the third dimension, that destroyed them and will also destroy, or could destroy, humanity. If humanity was left to its own devices and there was no interaction between humanity and any other alien race at all, then humanity actually would have a much greater chance of following the path of the Nibiruans and making the same mistakes. But since the terrible negative problems that show up in this dimension are being done to us by another species, we're being subjected to this, even though that's a really horrible thing. Because of this, we have a much greater chance to not make those same mistakes and follow the reptilians' path, essentially. And just keep in mind that even though what is being done to us is really horrible, before the reptilians showed up and started manipulating us in this way, we were already doing this to ourselves. We were already following blood sacrifice, pedophile religions, at least in the Dark Age, during the Kali Yuga, as the Hindus call it. We were already doing this to ourselves. This was already happening on the planet, on Earth, by itself, before the reptilians ever showed up, or at least before they started manipulating us. At first, they weren't interested in us, but they started messing around with us because they basically had no other choice. There was no other advanced humanoid species available to them within their range, on any planet within their, within the range of their craft, I guess, their spacecraft. And the Nibiruans only control us during the Dark Age. We are now, by my calculations, a few hundred years into the ascending Dwapara Yuga, heading back to the Age of Light. And on the other side of the cycle, the reptilians once again seized control of humanity and was able to influence us. They didn't seize control by force. They seized control by us falling for their crap again, for their deception. During each dark age, we inevitably fall back into religion, which then leads to loss of direct divine connection, which is what Holy Communion actually is. And when you lose divine connection, then you become religious because you don't know, because you have no way of knowing anything about a God or the divine, or you just don't know. You have no connection. You've lost your connection to the divine. And so then you degrade into belief systems, and these belief systems become increasingly more and more radical and violent during the Dark Age, and eventually we end up right back in the same blood sacrifice pedophile crap. And so, in a way, this is our karma. We have done it to ourselves. If we were innocent, then it wouldn't have happened this way. And I know a lot of people are going to have issues with that statement, especially in the lightworker community, but that's the way I see it in meditation. I don't see that we're victims. There are no victims in this universe. We created this universe. We co-created this universe on a soul level. How can we be a victim of our own creation? Of course, everybody gets what they deserve. That's the reality. And that's why we need to embrace the warrior spirit to get past this. We have to have a reckoning within ourselves and without, with the world. And the elites are not going to go away by themselves. They're not going to go, oop, you caught us. Here's the keys to the kingdom. Okay, we'll quietly go to jail for the rest of our lives. No, I don't think so. It's not going to go down that way. We have to be spiritually enlightened, open-hearted warriors. Warriors of light or warriors of darkness, depending on the situation. Darkness is not evil. Darkness is the ability, power in darkness is not black magic or any of that nonsense. Power in darkness is the ability to, do really difficult things and succeed. Evolving your dark side is not evolving your black magic capabilities. That's just a fairy tale. Evolving your dark side is evolving your strength, your wisdom, your patience, your consistency, your gratitude, your capacity for gratitude, and all these different kinds of things. These are the lessons of the dark side. The lessons of the school of hard knocks are the lessons of the dark side. We don't really understand what the dark side is. And I'll talk about that in another talk because I need to get back to the thread at hand here. And so humanity fell once again under the reptilian influence and deception. And so this happened in the ancient Sumerian Empire, somewhere around 3,000 to 4,000 BC. And that was during the descending Dwapara Yuga, when humanity lost the spiritual light, lost the direct connection to the divine, and we once again slid back into our religion and belief systems and so on. And this started in the Middle East. And actually at that time that the Sumerian Empire was established in Iraq, which is ancient Sumer, most of the world was still in a spiritually connected or enlightened state. And so this cancer, this stupidity of humanity, where we fell under reptilian influence, once again, that started in Iraq in the Middle East, and then spread slowly through the Middle East, and then spread slowly to other areas, and it resulted in the Roman Empire and all of this. And so this is one of the karmic reasons why the Middle East is still such a mess today, is because that's where, the reptilian deception took root during this last cycle. But now we're breaking free again. And I think we're going to be free of this probably in the next couple hundred years. And we will not fall back under their control again until the next dark age. And it is possible that we won't fall under their control again. It's possible. Because nothing stays the same and cycles and repeats endlessly. There's always movement forward or backwards, up, or down. There's always progression upwards for a species or a decline, one or the other. So we'll either, make progress or we'll decline. And so humanity, if humanity can overcome the reptilians' negative influences, then we will eventually become the most advanced species in our galactic neighborhood. So we're meant to be the replacements species for the fallen angels since they fell. And will become as technologically advanced as they are, even more so actually, because when you have spiritual enlightenment, then you are able to receive knowledge which can be applied to science that you can't receive if you're not spiritually connected. And we will travel to all parts of this galaxy, and we will travel to other galaxies, and we will essentially become like a mentoring race. We will mentor younger races and help them along. And humanity actually did have contact with a physical alien mentoring race, a 3D mentoring race, way, way back in our history. Actually, before the Nibiruans ever started messing around with us. So we were mentored, and then we fell under the influence of the Reptilians through our own shortcomings, basically. So everything cycles, you know. You're lifted up first and you're helped, and then you're tested, and then if you don't pass the test, then you fall, and then you recover and you get help again, and the cycle just repeats, you know.
Very cool. I'm getting a little tired.
Yeah, me too. I'm experiencing like a massive psychic attack actually for the last 30 minutes.
Really?
Yeah, it's like getting to the point where I'm seeing spots. I'm about to like pass out. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well, I still wanna unravel this story, but all the information you just gave me is like it's gonna take me weeks just to assimilate what you've said. I mean, this could be like a whole docu-series kind of thing, like Rich Ryan's view of the universe and the history of mankind. It could go deep.